She had known for 214 days. She had counted. Not out of obsession, but because knowing the exact number made it feel like something she had chosen. Not something that had happened to her. This is the story of a woman who discovered the worst thing a person can discover, and decided that how she responded mattered more than what had been done to her. If you have ever had to choose between reacting and waiting, this story is for you. Subscribe before we begin, because this one ends very differently from how it starts. Chapter 1. The Woman Who Already Knew. Her name was Claire. 34 years old, composed, the kind of woman who thought carefully before she spoke and meant every single word when she did. She had been married to Ryan for 10 years. A decade of Sunday mornings reading the newspaper on opposite ends of the sofa. Shared grocery lists with handwriting she could recognize from across a room. The particular intimacy of knowing someone well enough to finish their sentences, and still choosing to let them finish it themselves. She had loved him the way you love something you built slowly with your own hands, not perfectly. Not without difficulty, but with intention. She had thought they were happy. She had been mostly right. She found out on a Tuesday evening in November. She had left work early with a headache and come home to a quiet house. She walked into the kitchen to pour a glass of water and saw his phone on the counter. Screen lit, a message visible before it dimmed. She was not trying to read it. She was just standing there, reaching for a glass. But the words were right there. 3 sentences. She read them in about 4 seconds. And in those 4 seconds, the 10 years she thought she understood rearranged themselves into something she did not recognize. The name on the message was Sophie. Sophie, who had been Claire's closest friend since their first year of university. Sophie, who had stood beside Claire at the altar as her maid of honor, crying before Claire even did. Sophie, who came to their house for dinner every few weeks and hugged Claire warmly at the door and sat across from Ryan and laughed at his jokes and touched his arm sometimes when she laughed. Claire had never thought anything of that. She thought about it now. She stood in the kitchen for a long time. The water was still running in the sink. She turned it off. She set the glass down. She went upstairs. She did not cry. She did not call anyone. She just thought. Chapter 2. The Decision. Ryan came home at 7. She heard his key in the door, his footsteps in the hallway, the sound of him putting down his bag, a specific small thud she had heard 10,000 times. He walked in and kissed the back of her neck the way he always did. She kept her eyes on the chopping board. She said, "How was your day?" He said, "Long. Good. Yours?" She said, "Fine." And that was the moment Claire made her decision. Not in some dramatic flash of clarity. Just quietly, standing at a kitchen counter, holding a knife. She decided she was not going to react. Not yet. She had seen what happened when people reacted. She had watched a colleague find out her husband was cheating and confront him that same night, screaming, demanding answers at 2 in the morning. Her husband had denied everything. She had no proof. He had stayed calm because she had not. And 3 months later she was the one who looked unstable. And he was the one who kept the house. Claire was not going to do that. She was going to be quiet. She was going to be patient. She was going to wait. For exactly the right moment. And while she waited, she was going to build something he could not take apart. Chapter 3. 214 Days. The next morning she made his coffee the way she always did. She kissed him on the cheek when he left for work. She smiled at the door until he turned the corner. Then she went back inside, sat down at the kitchen table with a notepad, and began to write a very quiet, very careful list. Over the weeks that followed, she did things he never noticed. She met with a lawyer, someone completely outside their social circle, in an office on the other side of the city. She went on a Wednesday lunch break and told no one where she was going. She opened a personal bank account 2 days later. Each month she moved a small amount, nothing unusual. Just a quiet, steady gathering, like filling a jar 1 spoonful at a time. She photographed documents from his filing cabinet on a Sunday afternoon while he was watching sport in the other room. Calmly, methodically, folder by folder. She was meticulous. She was patient. She was, for the first time in a long time, entirely in control of something. Ryan noticed nothing. He brought her flowers on a random Thursday, suggested a weekend away, reached for her hand in restaurants. She accepted all of it with a warmth that cost her something she could not quite name. But she paid it. Every time. The hardest moments were not the nights. The hardest moments were Sophie. Sophie called on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the kitchen. Claire looked at the name on the screen for a long moment. Then she answered. Her voice was warm, easy, exactly as it had always been. Sophie suggested lunch, that new place near Claire's office. She had been wanting to try it. Claire said that sounded lovely. She said she had missed her. She meant it, in a way that surprised her. That was perhaps the worst part of all of it. They had lunch. Sophie was funny and bright and remembered a story Claire had told months ago and followed up on it. She was, as she had always been, a good friend. Or she played one very convincingly. Claire ate her salad and laughed at the right moments and listened carefully to everything. And underneath all of it, very still and very cold, She was watching, remembering everything. On the drive back to the office, Claire sat in the car park for a few minutes before going in. She was not going to cry about Sophie. Crying about Sophie would mean feeling the full weight of what that friendship had been, and what it had turned out to be. She could not afford that yet. Later, she told herself. For now, she had work to do. Chapter 4. The Anniversary. Their 10th wedding anniversary fell on a Saturday in late spring. Ryan had made a reservation at the restaurant where they had celebrated their 3rd anniversary. Their 5th, their 7th. He had invited both families. His parents, her sister, his brother, and Sophie. Of course. Sophie. Claire bought a new dress. Not to impress Ryan, not to perform happiness. For herself. She sat in the salon chair on Saturday morning and watched herself in the mirror and thought, "You are ready." The dinner was warm and candlelit and full of the particular tenderness that gathers when people who love each other are in one room. Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. He said quietly, 10 years. I'd do it all again. She held his hand. She smiled. She waited until dessert. Chapter 5. What silence had been building. She stood up slowly. The table quieted. She picked up her glass. She said she wanted to make a toast. Ryan smiled up at her, relaxed, proud. She looked around the table slowly. At his parents, her parents, the people who had watched them marry. And Sophie, sitting very still at the far end of the table with a wine glass halfway to her lips. Claire's voice was clear and steady. She said that 10 years was a long time to know someone. Long enough to know them completely. Long enough to know exactly what they had been doing for the past 7 months. The table went still. She did not look at Ryan. She looked at each face in turn and she spoke without drama. No raised voice, no tears. Just facts. Dates, locations, the message on the phone, the hotel receipt, 214 days of knowing. When she finished, she set her glass down carefully. She picked up her bag. She looked at Ryan once. He was the color of paper. She looked at Sophie. Sophie was looking at the tablecloth. Her wine glass still in her hand, tilted slightly, a small dark stain spreading on the white cloth where it had spilled without her noticing. Claire looked at her mother. She said, quietly, "Sit down, Mum." Her mother sat. "I'm all right," Claire said. And she was. She walked out into a cool spring evening. She stood on the pavement for a moment. She breathed. She felt quiet. A very deep, very settled quiet. Like a room after a long storm. When the windows have finally been opened. And the air is clean again. Chapter 6. What she had already built. The divorce was filed the following Monday. Her lawyer had everything. The account she had been filling for 7 months was ready. She had already signed the lease on a small apartment 3 weeks earlier. Good light, a kitchen she could make her own, a bedroom that would be entirely hers. She had done everything quietly. Everything in order. Everything on her own terms. Ryan called 17 times in the first week. She answered on the 18th. She said she hoped he was well. She said her lawyer would be in touch. She said goodbye. He started to say something, his voice already breaking. She had already hung up. Sophie sent a long message. It began with sorry 3 times in the opening sentence. Claire read it once, all the way through. Then she made herself a cup of tea. She thought about 17 years of friendship. She felt it, then, properly, finally, the full weight of what that friendship had been and what it had turned out to be. She let herself feel it for as long as it needed. Then she picked up the phone and deleted the message without replying. Some apologies are not for the person receiving them. They are for the person sending them. And Claire had no interest in making Sophie feel better. Chapter 7. 215. A year later, Claire sat in the kitchen of her apartment on a Saturday morning. Good light, her coffee, a book she had been meaning to read for 3 years and was finally reading. She was not over it. She wanted to be honest with herself about that. The truth was simple and not very tidy. 10 years had been real. The loss of them was real. Some mornings it still arrived without warning, a song, a smell, the way light fell through a window, and suddenly 10 years were right there in the room with her. Heavy and close. She did not push those moments away. She let them come. She let them pass. And then she picked up her coffee cup and turned the page. She had not spoken to Sophie. She did not intend to. She had not even once, regretted waiting. Because she understood now what those 214 days had really been. Not a strategy. Not a performance. They had been the days she spent learning that she could trust herself. That her silence had never been weakness. It had been, from the very first night, a choice. Her choice. Made quietly. Made carefully. Made entirely on her own terms. And that no one could ever take from her. If Claire's story stayed with you, leave a heart in the comments for a woman who knew how to wait. And tell me, was she right to wait 214 days? Or should she have walked out the night she found that message? I read every single comment. Every one. Subscribe and turn on the bell. Because on Friday, there is a secret that has been buried for 15 years. And the person who buried it is about to run out of time.